Welcome to Mindset U Podcast, your source of mindset education. We aim to provide you with free, valuable education for you to thrive. Enjoy. In this installment, Moses, Jason, and myself discuss the concept of emotions. Are we just reactive creatures that have no control over ourselves? Or are we able to master our emotions and express ourselves through them? Please share with us your ideas and comments regarding this concept. Enjoy.
Yeah,
and understand what's happening.
I know. The only reason why I know when my heart rate's up is because I'm like, oh, I'm tired. I'm getting tired real fucking quick. I'm breathing heavy. I'm not breathing like how I normally do. I'm not calm. I'm overthinking everything. I'm scared to throw a punch. And then I'm like, oh, okay. I'm scared. I'm fucking terrified right now because this dude's a lot better than me. So fuck me up. And there's been times when I'll spar the guy the first time and I'm real nervous. And then the second time I'm like, alright, he beat my ass, but I'm like, okay. Yeah, what's gonna happen now? I'm gonna get beat up again? Alright, I already did that, let's go. And then do something better the next time because I'm not scared anymore.
Like the meaning of I'm gonna get my ass beat means that
and for me it's not even like what are people gonna think if I get my ass beat? I don't give a fuck what people think. I'm like, I do not enjoy the feeling of getting hit. If not getting hit, of getting hit and not knowing where the hits are coming.
Yeah, but that's the meaning, right? That's the meaning itself of like, I'm in this situation that I've trained for, and I don't even know what's going on.
That's so scary. I don't think anybody's ever really gives a fuck about other people that's the excuse, the superficial kind of.
But you know what though? The only reason why I say it's different is because I've seen kids train the blue collar, right? And they do really, really well sparring. You see them come a long way. They're taking their training and doing it, and the minute that they're in front of a crowd, it changes.
Because now the whole experience from sparring, think about it, the data that you're receiving now with a whole bunch of people in front of you, that changes everything at that point. And that changes the emotional response. Right?
Oh, yes, it does, because people just are brawling and it's amazing.
It's like when you broke up with an ex, right?
Yeah.
But then you knew you were going to go to the spot and you were going to see this ex.
Yeah.
I'm sure the emotional, physiological responses change.
Yeah,
right?
Punch a fucking brick wall, yeah?
Yeah, exactly. You want to punch a brick wall, you try to change the way that you move because you're reacting to that emotion.
Yeah.
You're not creating logical thought, she's going to be there. It's like, no, I'm feeling this way, so therefore I have to.
That's the only feeling that matters right now.
Exactly.
And that's also, that changed me completely.
That's a big event.
That changed me. I was like, that's way too much emotion for one week.
But let me ask you a quick question.
Yeah.
When experiencing those emotions and then a negative outcome came out, right? So broke up with someone, you're having all these emotional kind of reactions, and you come to the conclusion of suppress. I don't want to feel these emotions.
It's not so much suppress, it's more so don't let these emotions control you so fucking much that you're not thinking. That you're just going off of your first initial feeling. You're not even evaluating why you feel this way. You're just going off of how I feel, not how anybody else feels, not how she feels, not how he feels, not how anybody who I'm affected feels, just how I feel.
So
that's what I'm learning.
That's a great point. We talk a lot about the space. There's a space from the physiology, the emotion, to the thinking, right? So to the action rather. So, you poke me here and I react like this, right? There was no space. It was action, the trigger and reaction, right? But then when you're able to create that space is where you're able to insert awareness. Right? And that awareness, okay, I was just poked here. What does this mean? So for example, if I'm staying still because there's a fucking tiger right there and I need to remain still, and Moses comes in and pokes me from behind and I go, I'm gonna get eaten by that. If I have no fucking awareness and control of my reaction, I'm dead. So in that aspect, I need to be able to reconcile, okay, this just happened and I'm not going to react. And that's an extreme example of what we go through on a daily basis, right? We get this emotional trigger of like, someone cuts me off on the road, fuck you, right? Or we take a moment and we go, space, okay, recognize I felt disrespected by this person, doesn't fucking even know who I am, and I don't know them, and so on and so forth, and don't know what's going on in their lives. Like, oh, all of a sudden you release all these emotional reactions, all these emotional kind of physiology in your body without a reaction.
So then do you ever really have control of the emotion, or are you controlling the label that's placed on the emotion? So that awareness, is it really controlling the emotion? So like somebody cuts you off, like you feel this thing, you're creating a space between automatically placing a label on that thing.
I think you don't ever like, well, there you can influence emotions, right? But in the sense of it's a the parasympathetic response. It's not the parasympathetic, the peripheral nervous system, where it's like a two-way street. It's a highway. Got information going out, information coming in, right? You can affect information going out. So for example, I want to raise my heart rate. I can do things with my breathing, so on and so forth, to affect that, which then create physiology that can be collaborated into a emotional response. On the same note, I can have external things coming in, where stimuli on the external world is happening, and I don't think you can necessarily control that it's like trying to control a highway where people are driving 80 miles per hour. You're not gonna just stop in the middle of the highway, say everyone stop, but what you can do is train yourself in the states where would trigger those external reactions.
So you can train yourself to be comfortable with the physiological responses, to give yourself enough space to identify the labels that are being placed in that moment. But you can never really control an emotion. You're always emotional. Like right now, we're having a conversation, right? There's an emotion. Like there's something triggered Jay emotionally to go onto his cell phone and look at the thing, right? I'm talking to you and I'm seeing Jay from the corner of my eye, and the decision to say that and all of these things came from some type of physiological response based on the data that I was receiving. I can't control that physiological response because the physiological response is also determined from variables that are being displayed in front of me.
Let's challenge that, because if you are, again, going back to athleticism, you're in a fight, right? Or you are in the military, right? And let's say, for example, you're a sniper in the military, right? Where your heart rate, controlling your heart rate is important to be able to hit someone, right? That is physiology that you need to master and control in that moment in order to perform.
But what's creating the physiological response? The experience, no?
The experience. But you've trained yourself to be able to, for example, okay, I can't quite aim, my heart rate's racing up, okay, bring my heart rate back down. You literally turn it like a knob. Okay. There's also an artist who does this tiny stuff, and he's learned how to slow down his heart rate while he's doing the art.
So you're saying you can create, but that also means that you're changing the physiological response by being aware with the label of your experience. By training yourself in that experience. Mm-hmm. So like, you're still emotional, you just trained the label that's being placed in that moment, right? So like, if you're a sniper and you're on a roof and you see the enemy, you've trained yourself enough to understand that all of these physiological responses can change the way or your accuracy and result in the outcome of what you're trying to achieve in the moment. So you put yourself in similar situations where you're receiving similar patterns of data, which create a set of physiological responses, allowing yourself to connect with those physiological responses, which then means, oh, the more that I receive this data, the more I understand my physiological responses, which means when my physiological responses won't react, they will respond because they've seen this data before. But the physiological responses still exist. And it's never like, you're not going to go into a fight and just be like, ever, right? Like, and not get an elevated heart. You will, right? Adrenaline will come out at that point. It's now how much comes out, how high, how you deal with it. It's all based on the experience in which the labels that we've collected and placed on those moments. It's like when Jay told the story about, about getting nervous before a fight. Until after you get the first round, you're like, oh shit, okay, here, I experienced that label. Now I can manage, I can control these physiological responses a little bit better with different techniques and all these stuff.
Pretty much, that's the hardest thing that hit me in every pocket. that's the
first round. It's the first round.
Yeah, because he didn't know he was fighting either. So I was like, oh, okay, so I know what he's gonna dump everything on that first round and hope that he takes my little ass out. And yeah. All right, well, that's all I got. Yeah, we're good.
Well, maybe it's not even the idea of control is probably the problem, right? Like, the idea that we have control over anything. Like, you don't have control over the variables that you have in front of you. And you don't ever have control over the emotions. But you can create something out of it, which is essentially space. You don't ever have control.
I don't know, I'm having a tough time with that. I'm like, not ever having control. So I guess identifying what is control. Because to me, influencing the reaction and the outcome is control.
So if you get a certain result, then you were in control.
Not necessarily. If you don't pull out, you might get her pregnant.
You're still not in control.
Not in control. You might try to control it because you don't try to have a baby, try to get this bitch pregnant. But you might not because you have full control.
So the idea.
But again, the control aspect is. For you guys, do you mean when it's control, you have total influence or you have some influence?
So let's talk about like an experiment, a science experiment. They create a control group. Mm-hmm. What does that mean?
Variables are all over the place.
Variables are all over the place? Mm-hmm. Meaning that variables can influence it no matter what?
So a control group is where you're testing, let's say you're testing males and females, the topic of today. So you have one group males, one group females, and then you have a control group, which is a mix, right? So you get the general. So you take those variables and you scramble them, right? So that you can see if this is being influenced by this, the point of the experiment, or they're...
Like, I get it, right? So like, what I'm saying is like, maybe the control is a spectrum, maybe it's not a line. Mm-hmm. Control is like a level of spectrum. So for example, right, you have control over variables in which, to a certain extent, that are within yourself. If I'm a sniper and I'm shooting a target, I'm able to control these things. I'm able to react or respond to the variables that are outside of me. But then even the target, the way the target responds, is out of my control. The variables in front of me, anything that's in between me and the target, not in my control. The only thing I'm in control of, to a certain extent, are my physiological responses and my training.
Which physiological responses combine to the emotion.
Combine into emotion. So, but even that, you don't have, like, you can't stop your heart, right? You can't.
But that's what I was saying, totalitarian control over it or influence, right? Like, what do you consider to be control?
I consider control meaning that you have dominance over all the variables.
But then that's for nothing. There's nothing that you ever have any control.
That's what I'm saying. Like in my mind, you don't ever have control over anything because you don't ever have dominance over it.
But under that definition. But if you look at it as a spectrum of influence,
right? To me, influence would be more a better word. If you're looking at how to manipulate your environment, you look at influence, that to me makes a lot more sense. How can I influence my environment or manipulate my environment? That makes more sense. The word control means like.
So to you, control is an absolute.
It's an absolute. I take this, I pick it up. I'm controlling it. I'm moving it back and forth, right? Like, it's solely mine.
But there's also then, that's as much influence that you can have. But if I say, we're gonna go to a microscopic level, I need you to hit it to this point. When you extend and
Then
whip
I
back,
have no control.
now you don't have that level of influence.
Yeah.
So like you can always go into that spectrum of influence. Like for that, you have a lot of influence over what's happening, but you don't have absolute control. Okay, so if we agree with that definition, then going back to
I think it was an emotional reaction. I felt the tingle.
You're not wrong.
I prolonged the tingle for a little bit because we were talking. And then I was
What
like,
happens if you were sitting in a car during traffic at that time? How would this sensation feel?
oh, it's the fucking worst feeling in the world. What's even worse is like when you hold off that sensation and then like you see a bathroom and you're like 10 steps away from it.
when you're at your door trying to unlock the door.
And all of a sudden your wife's like, we're gonna let a little bit out right now, but you're like, fuck.
You don't ever have control, bro. Ever.
I noticed it really bad with like doing like the overnights and being like in a news truck, and there's no fucking bathroom around. And I was just there with some fucking news report. I'm like, can you please turn away because I gotta go pee. Or else I'm gonna pee myself. I'm peeing a lot of bottles.
What does your health, love life, spirituality, career, finances all have in common? Your mindset. Mindset is the source of creating change. To learn how to install these and other life-transforming concepts, browse through our free collection of courses at betheproject.com.